What's up, mobile gamers? It's Drunzer Gigs, and we've got a real awesome video for you guys today. This is my Vanguard tier list. Now, I know you guys have been waiting for it, really excited to drop it, and hopefully we'll be able to do more tier lists on the channel. I do have a different recording setup for tier lists just because I can't do that on mobile very easily, and can't really share my screen as well. So let me know if you guys like the content because I love doing tier lists. And if you guys like it, then I like it. And let's just get right into it. This is going to be just for the Vanguards. So there are 6 of them currently in T3 Arena. And the most recent one is Fade, who was in last season's Battle Pass. Now, a lot of you guys know that Gatlin is pretty much shattering the meta. It doesn't matter who you pick, you're dead if there's a Gatlin, and she's very difficult to counter unless you essentially seek her out and change your whole playstyle just to counter her until she spawns back in. So I'm not really going to be considering Gatlin too much. We'll talk about where everyone lands in terms of fighting Gatlin and how they can counter her, but that's not going to be a very big determining factor for their tier. I also want to let you guys know, even in C tier, which is the lowest tier, because I don't honestly think any of these heroes are in D or F tier. I think they're all usable. I think C means that you can use them if you like, they just won't be very good. And then B is average. So S tier is going to be the must picks if you guys want to carry the team that you're on. And that's where we're going to go as far as what the tiers signify and what they mean. So I'm thinking this is going to go pretty quickly, but I'll try to extend it for you guys and give my reasoning for all of the placements. And as far as placement goes, one thing I will tell you guys, this is very casual, all right? This isn't your top pro player tier list. This is for somebody who picks up the game and they're like, you know what? I want to know who's good because I want to know if the hero that I like to play is worth using in a competitive setting. And that's going to be what it's for people who just pick up the game and want to play. And we're not going to be going too in depth into the meta. And I will also be making a tier list video for all the characters, not just in their specific classes. And so you'll see things change. So let's say Victor is at a C, because honestly, that's the first one we're going to do. Victor's at a C. He's not necessarily going to be at a C tier in the final tier list with all the heroes. So this is just class based. So you'll even see if I put a bunch of heroes in S tier, that doesn't mean they're S tier overall. That means they're S tier in their own class, just so you guys are aware. Victor is pretty self-explanatory. He just is not very good right now. You can have a better cooldown on your ultimate if you use his gun spinning ability. I forget what it's called, but that gun spinning ability is pretty much the saving grace to his kit because it enables you to get the ultimate, which is the only thing that's really good about him. His shotgun is very inconsistent. It only works if you're right up on the enemy. And comparatively, he does not have the ability to push a payload or keep a point in the same way that any of these other heroes do. And that's why he struggles so much. I will say he is the best counter to Gatlin, except for maybe Zero Kelvin if you're talking about countering as in not taking damage. But if you're going to go after a Gatlin, you would rather prefer a Victor over any of these other 5. And that's why I don't think anybody belongs in in D or F tier, and we're going to put Victor in C tier. He can counter Gatlin a little bit. He has the best chance against her, especially to close that gap with the 2 dashes. But the only saving grace to his kit is his ultimate. The dash does do damage, but it's not very much. I would say it's not a very good dash. But that is just kind of how things go. And we will be talking about how all of the other Vanguard heroes can uh, keep points and stay alive very easily compared to Victor. And that's kind of that benchmark. Vanguards are supposed to take damage and brawl or dive, but dish out a decent amount of damage as well. So they're kind of the backbone of the team, and that's why I think Victor belongs in C tier. He just doesn't have anything going for him. He has an ultimate that would be nice, but it doesn't have a very fast cooldown, and it's kind of the only thing in his kit that's very good. So that's why Victor's in C tier, and I think we'll probably go ahead and pick out a very easy S tier for you guys in this next character. This is your S tier. I think all you guys saw this coming. Ruby's insane. She is very flexible. She's very mobile. And they did nerf her, but I don't think it was too much. She's still very good, and you can definitely pick all of the other Vanguards if you don't like using her. But I think she is a poster child for what a Vanguard should be. She has very good abilities, and her damage was nerfed, but I don't think it was too much. A lot of the time, they'll nerf the heroes that they think are too strong into the ground, and they're almost unusable, like Aletta. And Ruby is still very, very good, very prominent, but she's not as usable compared to some of the other Vanguards and other heroes if you are trying to be competitive. So she still has that S tier spot, but she's not broken. She's not a must pick, and you can honestly use any of these Vanguards at an S level. But I think that she's the easiest to get to that S level for the average player, and I think she is very good in a variety of situations. The fact that her shield moves can kind of be a double-edged sword because it can move forward, which is nice if you're trying to push onto a point. But if you're trying to keep that point, you only have that shield up for a little bit before it moves off of the point. And so you have to reuse that shield again and hit the ability again. So it's kind of a catch-22. I think, honestly, she's very, very good. She's in a good spot. And the nerf wasn't too much. She's basically, it brought her in line without needing to balance her too much. It allowed her to kind of have her pick rate drop just enough so that all the other Vanguards had a chance to be picked. And obviously, the shield is very good because you have 3 sections that are all independent from each other if they get broken. So you can hide behind one, and if it gets destroyed, you switch over to another. And that's very good. She has a stun ability, which is insane. It is very awesome. You can stun multiple different heroes when you're fighting in 5v5 or even in 3v3 if they're all clustered together. And that gives her a lot of usability, and it allows her to also counter some of these other heroes, especially other Vanguards. You'll see oftentimes if a Ruby is able to use her stun, she can turn the tide of the battle, which is really, really nice. I would say that her ultimate could use maybe a slight increase in the amount of, or a nerf in the amount of time it takes to come up. That's kind of up to you guys and what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments. But I think if they sped it up or slowed it down, it wouldn't be too big of a deal. It does need to be sped up just a tiny bit, I think, because they changed how many projectiles are launched and how much damage those projectiles do. So it kind of got a nerf, but she's still very, very good. She is an S tier Vanguard, in my opinion, and very easy to pick up as well. She counters all of the heroes that she is close to. If you're in Ruby's vicinity, you're going to get countered and stunned if you don't play cautiously and stuff like that and be aware of your surroundings. So I think she's very, very good. She is an S tier Vanguard. She's not going to drop unless they nerf her again. And that's where we're going to put her. The next pick is going to be an A tier. And this is going to get me a lot of heat. All these next picks are going to get a lot of heat from you guys. S tier Ruby, C tier Victor. That's obvious. Jabali is going in A tier. And a lot of you guys are going to say he's S tier. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Jabali is very easy to stop. If you have a Gatlin especially, he just is, it's not really worth using him because his shield goes down too fast. It limits his movement, and it's very easy for other heroes, especially if they're damaged, to get around that shield. Flankers can get around the shield as well and get to his back and where he is exposed. Not very good. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is one of the biggest reasons why I don't think he's an S tier. The support heroes cannot heal his shield. If they could heal his shield even a small amount, he'd be S tier. But what happens is you have a Jabali who's got his shield up and a support who's sitting behind him. And neither the Jabali nor the support are able to use their kits to their full potential. And so you basically have a Jabali who sits up with his shield and the support does nothing. And then once his shield drops, the support has a hard time healing him because he's a sitting duck without his shield. So if you are going to play Jabali, I would kind of use the shield sparingly. Put the shield up when damage is incoming and then keep it down. That way you can keep your damage that you are taking and trying to mitigate a little bit lower. And maybe it takes some health instead of some shield. And you kind of split the difference. That way the healer can do their job, but you also have a shield up. And I just think that that's the best way to play him. His arc of lightning that goes through the ground, it's kind of good, but kind of not. It kind of depends. It's a little hard to time. If it traveled faster, I would say he'd be an S tier. He has a lot of small changes that could bring him to S tier, but I think right now he's just very, very good, and that's why he's in A tier. His ultimate, obviously, is very nice, but his second one is going to be a lot better once they add it back in. I think his ultimate's very good for crowd control, but it also makes him very easy to shoot down. If you're playing Gloria and he uses his ultimate after dropping his shield, it's basically a free kill unless he uses it to go into cover or something like that or behind a wall. And honestly, he's just way too easy to stop. I think that's why he's in A tier. He's still very good, don't get me wrong. I just think he needs that little bit of push to get him there. So this is my last tier to fill, and that is 0 Kelvin. A lot of people think he's in D or F, and they're sleeping on him. They really are. He's the only one that can counter Gatlin completely. He has an invincibility for his second active where he just turns into a snowman. And honestly, the only way that is a drawback is that it doesn't push the cart. So I think that 0 Kelvin's very good. If it pushed the cart, he might move up into A depending if they made the snowball a little bit bigger. But right now, if you have his passive, he's very strong. He can counter pretty much anybody as long as you're staying behind that snowball and using it as cover. 0 Kelvin's very good, but if you have height on him or you flank him, that's where he starts to have trouble. And I think the fact that we have so many fast-moving characters in the flanking class and so many different ways to take height with the heroes that jump and with the new maps and stuff like that, I think that's why he's dropping down into B. I would have him at A if the snowball was bigger and if the second active was able to move the cart, then that would bring him up into A. But right now, he's just a solid average. He's very decent. He has a few drawbacks, but he also has some very good ways to capitalize on his Vanguard abilities and role. So his ultimate is very good for that, especially in control if you have maybe 3 or 4 people on the enemy team and they're all in the control point. You can use his ultimate, and it does everything Jabali's does except for the fact that you don't have to be in the fight. So I think there's a bunch of small changes to both him and Jabali that could bring them up a tier. And honestly, you can play all of these heroes, like I said, at an S tier. So we are going to go into the second to last hero, and that's Fort. Now, honestly, you can move him to S or to A, but I think he is the best A tier Vanguard because of the fact that he has a mix of what Ruby can do and a mix of what Jabali can do. He's got a shield that's not mobile, but you get it back in about 7 to 8 seconds, and it enables him to basically have a shield right after his other one is destroyed, unless you have a Gatlin who's destroying the shield before you can get it back. And his second ability gives him some armor, and it also removes any debuffs that he had on him, which is really nice. It removes any slow effect or blinding effect and stuff like that. So Fort's very good. If you use him right, you can two burst some of the smaller heroes like the flankers. And he kind of has that ability to fit into any sort of role. He doesn't necessarily have to be the front line, but he can also jump into a fight, drop his shield between maybe an ally and an enemy, and it can change the tide of battle very easily and very quickly. So I think he's the best in the A tier, and I think he's better than Jabali, and he's very slept on. A lot of these Vanguards are slept on, especially with our next pick here. But that's pretty much Fort. He's very basic, very easy to get a hold of, very easy to learn, and his ultimate can sometimes turn the tide of battle. It just depends on how you use it. So he's very user dependent. If you are not good, then Fort will kind of start to fall into that B tier. If you're very good, like I mentioned with all of these guys, Fort can easily go into that S tier, even with a somewhat above average player, I would say. I think Fort's very good. He's the benchmark of what a Vanguard does and should do. So that's where I put him. I know a lot of you guys are probably going to get mad. I'm not really sure. I think Fort's the one that I don't know what the community thinks. He's not picked almost at all, but those that pick him would say he's S tier. So let me know your guys' thoughts on Fort and where he falls. If you guys want to move him into any of these other tiers, honestly, be my guest. He's pretty good in all of those tiers, and he would fit in each one. Honestly, I can see arguments for both sides of the coin. This is the last Vanguard to rank in the tier list here, and this is going to make a lot of people mad. I don't even care. I know a lot of you are going to be like, oh, you're crazy. Fade's S tier. He really is. I mean, he is the total package. He has a shield that covers a wide area. He has a dash, which is very nice, but that none of the other Vanguards have except Victor, who's in C tier. And his dash has damage mitigation, about 20 to 25%, I want to say, which is very nice to close the gap. And if you close the gap and you hit them with that charge rush, they take damage from hitting the wall, and then also a follow-up shot that's free, sometimes even two. And then you have your allies on top of that in 5v5. If you charge somebody and your team is paying attention, it's an instant kill no matter who it is. Guaranteed, they will die. Absolutely no chance, even if they're a Vanguard. He can rush another Vanguard, and if you have another person doing some damage on your team, he will excel. And he is the only one who can counter pretty much everything the other Vanguards have. Jabali has his shield, right? If you use Fade's rush or his ultimate, he counters that. If they bring his second ultimate back, he counters that. If they bring his first ultimate, right, and you are spinning around as Jabali, both Fade's ultimate and his ability counter that. So all of these Vanguards that have these shields, Fade is not only able to bring his own shield that's just as respectable, but he can also counter them with two of his abilities. The dash is very good. It's very fast. And unless you do it from like way far away, you're going to hit your target a majority of the time. And his shield is very good. You can pop it down pretty much whenever you want. It's got a pretty quick cooldown. And it actually has a lot of usability. And I think that he's very much an overlooked hero. There's so much you can do with his ultimate. If you have a way to throw somebody off a map, you can do that. He's the best. And honestly, the only reason Ruby beats him is because of her stun. I think if she got a nerf to her stun, Fade would be the number one Vanguard because everyone likes Jabali. And Fade instantly counters him with just his active ability. He is very hard to kill. A smart Fade can use his ability whenever he wants over and over and over again, because if he takes damage, right, when he's taking damage, it slows down the cool down of his ability. It speeds it up, I mean. So you'll get it faster the more damage you take, which is very, very good, and that's why he's an S tier. You can flame me in the comments all you want, and I welcome that. If you guys have reasons you don't think Fade's very good, go ahead. I know all of the other T3 arena YouTubers, they have a completely different tier list than me, and I think some of them are kind of crazy. Obviously, Ruby's an obvious S tier, but you have people like Fade and Zero Kelvin who are not getting the love they deserve because the people think that you need a shield that is super awesome and can't be destroyed like Jabali's to be a good Vanguard, and that's just not the case. The best Vanguard is the one that can move with the shield. And Zero Kelvin, Ruby, and Fade all have that ability. And the reason Zero Kelvin is down in the bottom when he has the same ability to move with his shield is that his shield is not very good in general. It's too small. It doesn't do enough damage. It's just not really there for him. And that height advantage that you see, especially with snipers like Osas and Hua Ling, I mean, he's going to get killed if they have height advantage on you. And Fade and Ruby will not die very easily. If you want to be honest with yourselves and have everybody in the tier list based on how they counter Gatlin and how they go against Gatlin, everybody's in like a B to C tier because Gatlin's just way too strong. So I didn't want to include that, but I will say that Zero Kelvin, even though he's B, has the best chance against a Gatlin. And if you're into that mid-close range, Victor has the best chance against a Gatlin, and then maybe Fade after that. So I think you almost flip the tier list on its head when it comes to countering Gatlin and stopping her, but a lot of other heroes like the flankers and the damage can do it better. So those are my thoughts on where the Vanguards sit in the tier list. And let me know what you guys think. If you guys want to literally list out all your characters, go ahead. If you want to give me reasons, I'm all for it. I want to talk to you guys in the comments a bunch about where you think these heroes are. And feel free to not only drop a sub, but link this to all the other content creators and be like, did you see this? Because I want them to know that there is a tier list out here that is a little bit more thought through. Obviously, pro players are going to have a different take on it. And a lot of the other content creators will say that Jabali's S tier. How could you have Fade any higher than B tier? You know what I mean? And honestly, you really got to think about what their abilities can bring to the table, especially in terms of teamwork. Teamwork is the key to this tier list. The heroes in these Vanguard tiers, if you have a bad team, it's going to drag them down at least a tier. If you have a good team, it's going to boost them at least a tier, maybe even more. So I think that the ones that benefit the most actually from the team play is actually going to be Fade and Ruby. If you have a strong team, you only need one other person to stick with the Fade or the Ruby to win you the whole game. And I think that's very underrated and overlooked by a lot of the other content creators and players in general. So that's my thoughts on it. Make sure you drop a sub. We did get to 200, so hopefully we can get to 1,000 here in a little while. So that's the video for you guys. Drop a like. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, talk in the comments about what your thoughts are on each hero, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.